morning and welcome to your Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. We always try to start Viewpoint with a kudo or two, and I think the most appropriate thing I can do, Mrs. Busby, before you introduce our guest, is throw a bucket load of kudos to the Logan County Genealogical Society. We're going to talk a lot about that this morning, but they do a tremendous amount of good. And the older you get, which is pretty old for me, the more you can appreciate the work. And there's a lot of volunteer work going on down there, sometimes by just a couple of people. So we're going to talk about that. Introduce our guest this morning.
Well, and they're currently in their drive for new members, as
that's an everyday
many
thing.
Organizations are. And you know, for the membership fee, it's certainly well worth your while to join, if for no other reason than getting your periodical that you send out, because
Roots and Branches.
This newsletter covers so many things in our area that happened a very long time ago. The terminology alone will just tickle the dickens out of you.
Well, she cleaned that up.
Well, yeah, really. But, we don't talk that way anymore.
We don't.
No, and it's
a shame.
just it's a little more respectful. Although I'd say life was more respectful in the olden days, but terminology sure wasn't. There's a big article in here on washing clothes. Now this is not washing like W-A-S-H. It's W-A-R-S-H-I-N-G. Washing clothes. And, that was an all-day thing for those poor souls back then.
Yeah, no automatic machines back then.
Oh, no.
And every time they improved a washing machine, it didn't look like it was anything less laborious because it was just a mechanical thing that you used arm power for.
Yes. Yeah.
My grandmother had 2 lines, and I'll bet you they were 35 yards long, both of them. She must have had at least 70 yards of wire up in their yard out there at Burtonview to hang up the washing.
Washing, yeah. Well, until I moved out to Christian Homes, I always hung my washing up.
Well, listen, we're going to wash this program through. We've got a guy who gave up his time this morning.
Mr. Donath.
Mr. William Donath.
Bless you.
Well, thank you for having me again.
How long have you been a member of this?
I started with the society in 2003.
Bless your heart.
Almost 20 years now, 19 years.
But before that, Bill, he was an educator and an administrator in education. Let's go back and talk about that just a little bit, Mr. Donath.
Okay, I was in education for 33 years. I started in 1970, and I keep telling people I started teaching the third quarter of the last century of the last millennium. Makes it sound a little more impressive that way. So a little humor in there. So that, but I was elementary teacher for 10 years, and then I went to the high school level and did that for 12, and then an administrator for 11 years.
Now, you were involved in that for a very long time, and as the years went by, did you feel that for the benefit of the kids, things got better year after year, or sometimes do you think we slipped a little?
There's a caveat to that answer. His tour of duty in education was in, quote, more simple times.
Well,
without the stress that we have in today's society.
Yeah, after Columbine in, 1991, things changed a lot. The anxiety of the kids and training for closing down the schools, things of that sort. We went through a lot of that, and that changed a lot to know that at any moment somebody might come into school. So we were preparing for that as soon as Columbine took place. It was unfortunate. It's been unfortunate ever since.
Yeah. So let's go to the Logan County Genealogical Society, sir. What was the date of the inception of that, and how did the Logan County Genealogical Society get the kickstart and to be the important
Actually,
part of our community.
the society was started by a group of retired teachers.
Is that right?
Virginia Johnson, Lucille Henrichmeyer, and a lot of retired ladies in 1979. And then in 1986, it became the Genealogical and Historical Society. The two joined together, and we have all of the paperwork on that transition. So since 1986, it's been both. And so we're trying to put all that information into one little building, so which right now is under reconstruction.
Yeah, how close are we now?
Well, not too close.
Really?
We're trying to do things right. We have all the ceilings out. The company took all the ceilings out. All the suspended tile, the insulation is all gone. They've cleaned the bottom side of the roof, all the rafters and everything that's up above what our ceiling was, to make sure that smoke smell doesn't come back to us.
That's interesting. This was due, to the folks who might not remember, to a neighborhood fire. The building next to them had a fire, and the adjacent buildings, including the State Bank, got a lot of smoke damage.
Yes.
Considerable. And it was really considerable in the case of a genealogical society. You're not that big. Was that the old Basket Grocery?
Yes, it was.
Elmer Brown's Basket
And
Grocery.
on the old maps of the 1890s, it was a carriage shop. So they made carriages in there. So pre-car days. So we got some history in that building. And I don't know everything that's been in it.
And so we're not ready to open up yet, simply because it was so extensive, the smoke damage, that we had to close down and remove a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. And
Now, how about some of our artifacts?
the artifacts seem to be in pretty good shape. As they get all of that stuff above cleaned up, and as soon as the ceiling gets back in, they'll start cleaning the walls down, and they'll look at all the artifacts, and they'll determine then what kind of cleaning it would need, because we've got a lot of military uniforms up there that are on a clothes rack, and they're not in plastic or anything like that, so that's going to have to be dealt with. But we always look for the silver lining in something like this. We've always had a very high utility bill for gas and electricity. An old building like that leaks like a sieve. With all that ceiling out, we decided that now is the time, when there's nothing in the way, to bring in a company to spray foam insulation
Oh, yes.
and fill up all the cracks and the holes and keep all that heat in, or air conditioning in, whichever the case may be, and get that utility bill down to a manageable. And that's been our biggest item in expenditures ever since I've been there. Every year it's always the utility bill that costs the most. So we're putting a little money into that too, and it's something that'll pay itself back over time.
Well, you get a good return on that money.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Would like to see that utility bill go down considerably and pay us back what we're putting into it, because it's not cheap to have it sprayed stuff put in there. So we're working on that now. I just signed the contract for that.
You must have been
Past week.
so frightened when that fire began of all the things you could lose.
Yes. Fortunately, I had already gone to bed before the call came, and I didn't hear the phone ring, so I didn't know about it until the next morning. So I didn't lose any sleep that night. But I got down there the next morning, and the door was all broken in, because the fire department had to get in there.
Sure.
So we've replaced that door already, and it's a new door. And I had to go out and get a sheet of OSB and cut it down to cover the open door so that we had security of some sort there. but it was so badly damaged we couldn't repair it and had to be replaced. Fortunately, the insurance company's been very good so far, helping us out.
Yeah. Good for
They
them.
won't pay for anything that we're adding to it. They'll pay for what was there and needs to be replaced, but they're couldn't get them to pay for the spray foam.
Now, for those who are listening out there, they say, well, what's the Genealogical Society? What good does that do? Why is that important? Well, the older you get, the more important it's going to get. Let me assure you of that. Billy, what was the saying? The past is prologue?
Yes.
Or something to that effect.
If we pay attention to it.
And, when I was a volunteer there, Jim, and I got fired, by the way. Inefficient employee. Let me tell you why I got asked to not help out anymore. Wasn't fired per se, but they just didn't hurry me back. My job was to file obituaries and sort through them and file them in the right place. I guess the doggone interested in reading the doggone thing, I wouldn't get my work done.
I'd be afraid I'd be that kind of
happens a
employee
lot.
too.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So the history of our community is vital to us, and I recall that when I was helping out there, some little lady come in looking for something about Aunt Ruth, who was born in 1898 or something like that, and checking on. And does that go on today? People wander in.
Yes, yeah.
Looking for their
they walk
family's
in.
roots.
We spend a considerable amount of time helping people out finding things they can't find anywhere else. We have a lot of collections that aren't online. Like our local newspapers, they're not in newspapers.com yet. So we have some of those. We have microfilm on old newspapers. And if you've got that stuff, to make it useful, it has to be indexed. So we do a lot of that sort of work, of indexing our collections so that people know where to look. We pick out the names, page numbers, and put them together so that people know exactly where to go and look for information on their ancestors or whatever subject they might be
I'm a fan
researching.
of Henry Louis Gates' Finding Your Roots. I find that fascinating.
It's a very good show.
And there's some very sophisticated ways of looking. And of course, sometimes money's not an object in many
When you
most
got
of those
advertisers
cases.
paying for it, it's
So yeah, they got plenty of money to do that. But I find that Finding Your Roots a fascinating program, and so I commend it. And it'll make you more of a history buff to see how they go back and
Yes.
trace this person or that person. By the way, speaking of tracing, our sponsors are going to trace us down and say bad words about us if we don't give them some time. Go right ahead, Mr. Ash. Back live in the studios here, WLCN, high on County Road 2250. Our guest this morning on Viewpoint is Mr. William Donath, vitally interested and involved in our Logan County Genealogical Society. Without Bill Donath and two or three other small volunteers, we'd be adrift. We had working in genealogy and history like that is a science in and of itself. And you just don't walk in there and say, here, I'm here to help you. Although we'd like that once in a while, if you're going to be serious about it and show up often, because once you start a volunteer job like that, unless you stay with it, things kind of flop in the wind.
That's true. That's
and
true.
so we're encouraging people to take interest in the Logan County Genealogical Society down there on Chicago Street, right across from the old depot. A lot of history in there in that block.
Yeah, we just recruited 2 new members right here. One returning member and a new member, so that's pretty good. My day is well spent already.
Well, having Mr. Donath here reminded the old fellow sitting here that he hadn't been a paying member And I ought to be. So I'm going to be starting when we go out the door this morning. He's going to go out with my money. And we're going to buy Mrs. Busby. She's the younger member of the operation here. We're going to buy her a membership in the organization as well.
Not much younger, Bill.
So let's go back to the formation of that again. What was the year that we started at Logan County Genealogical?
It was 1979.
1959.
Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah.
God, I was just a kid then.
Yeah, we all were. But what we do in our mission is to collect and preserve all the history we can find of Logan County and the people who live there, because it's the people that make the history. So we have a lot of that, all the old, the early history books, Latham's book of 1878, the follow-up to that in 1886, and then Stringer's 1911.
I have a Stringer's history book.
I'm
That
just
is
starting
really
that. Judith has loaned me that book, and I'm starting to read. Boy, it's going to take me. I may not make it through the book. Judge Stringer had a unique way of writing, a lot of prose, and almost infinitesimal data.
Well, he was a member of the State Historical Society, and he, during World War I, he advised the DAR and the Women's Club, which were working together to collect all the information coming out of the newspapers and the official documents of Logan County, to collect all that for posterity. And I ran into that collection at the Lincoln Library, and it was just a fantastic thing to come across. And I had been working on the newspapers 20 feet away from it for 3 years for my World War I book. And then I got into that, and I said to Rich Summerall, when he was up there, I said, do you mind if I digitize this? You know, take pictures of it, make digital copies, get it on your computer, get it on our computer. And he said, yeah, go right ahead. So I spent several weeks, because they're big, 6 big albums that I had to work with. And so I photographed all that, made an index for it, digitized it, and at the same time I was collecting information for the book. So it was, I like doing something that gives me 2 products, and that worked out pretty good. So we've got that digital information from World War I and the book.
Well, Judy has that book. And she calls me every morning to make sure I'm feeling all right. She doesn't want that book to get away. And I found it just even opening up the early parts of the book about our creeks and streams and so forth,
yes.
and their origination, then where they went to, and the background is almost minutia, but without the minutia, you don't understand what's going on.
That's right. So. You probably heard of the Rubicon, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Back in the day, in 1865, when Postville and Lincoln merged, my great-great-grandfather, John Boy, became a alderman from the new 4th Ward, which is Postville. One of his first motions as an alderman was to build a bridge across the Rubicon. At that time, it was just an open ditch. It started at least up at what we call Latham Park now. It was North Park then. But the north side of North Park was just across the street from Robert Latham's house. It started there, crossed Kickapoo, crossed Pekin Street, Chicago Street, Sangamon Street, down Broadway, and then it cut off across the athletic field at the junior high. And if you go down 3rd Street, 4th Street, 5th Street, it always got that dip in there. It's in the bottom of that dip, and it just follows down the railroad track until it comes back across down at the end of Kickapoo Street. Well, I've been collecting articles on this thing for years. Every time I come across an article about the Rubicon and the process of tiling it, making culverts for it, building bridges across it, I've been saving all that for posterity. So, and to me, it's a funny thing, but it was a nasty sewer because all the Lincoln sewers dumped into it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And then it flowed on down across, well, you can get down to the corner of 6th and Maple Street even now. From time to time, it gets a little stinky down there. Well, that's where it is. It's underneath that low spot in 6th Street there. So,
You know, we'd be in a world of hurt if it weren't for people like you who just absolutely love history and are willing to research back this way. I could listen to you for hours. Bless your heart.
well, I'm picking this stuff up while I'm working on other projects. Right now, I'm working on the shoe collection. The Shoe family found that big collection of the Lincoln Herald in their jewelry shop when they closed it out. And it's 600, 700 copies of the Lincoln Herald from 1873 to 1894. Now, not all those years are represented, but I digitized it, cleaned it up, flattened it out, sanitized it.
Oh, I'm sure that's fact, yeah.
And then I photographed it and I got digital copies of it now. It's right on my computer, and I'm going through it, and I'm doing the local news, the Logan County news, and picking out all the names. Now, in those papers, you've got letters from Mount Pulaski, Atlanta, Elkhart, Burtonview, New Holland, San Jose, all of the Beeson, everybody had a correspondent that sent stuff in, information. So births, deaths, marriages that aren't recorded anywhere because they didn't have licenses for, you didn't have to have a birth certificate. You didn't have to have a death certificate. We've got a lot of that information from the old papers. So I pick up all that while I'm working on that. And I spend 2 or 3 hours a day, I suppose, working on that and I'm getting close to the end. And I've been working on that project since 2017, so almost 5 years. And then we've got a lot of other collections that need to be digitized and indexed, so if somebody's got some kind of interest in that, I'll teach them how to do it. My next birthday is going to be 76, so I don't know how much longer I will be at this, but and a lot of us are graying that are working there. There may be 8 of us that are really serious about the society, but we need more people who are interested in saving the history of Logan County or your community. It could be somebody from Beeson, somebody from Chestnut, somebody from Lake Fork. It could be anybody that wants to preserve that information and help us grow our what we have in our collections.
648-5510, the number to call if you would like to ask a question or make a comment. Our guest this morning, Bill Nonath, Major Domo in our Logan County Genealogical Society office. He and a few other deadly serious volunteers, and it takes that sort of attitude to make an office like that work. Now, if you want to know about Grandma Og, he can't tell you about Grandma Og in 1826, but he can tell you where to go look. 648-5510. Bill Donath, educator, retired from the field of education, professional education, which it certainly is, to be a volunteer, and it is all his work and the work of his fellow volunteers inures to our benefit. Almost daily you can have somebody walk in that front door on Chicago Street there looking for some information about their family. Is that about a statement of correction?
That is correct. We have that happen often, and we start with like a stringer, the formal histories, and then we find out who they're looking for. While they're looking through the formal stuff, I will go to my computer and look at all the indexes I've got and try to find information in the various sources, and then I go out to the collection and pull books off the shelf, or just print it off my computer because I probably already have it on there. But,
what would be, speaking of your computer, what would be if somebody like myself, for instance, wants to know something about their family? Is there one better or best source to look for? Well, most of us are familiar with Ancestry.com because of publicity and so forth. Are there other sites out there that one person could use?
Depends on if you're looking for free stuff, which most people start with. Family Search has a wealth of information, and it's all free. The Latter-day Saints have gone around the country and collected information from the various courthouses. I know I've seen notes on the records at our courthouse that they've already been there years and years ago. The people can get started that way. They even go back to Europe and other countries to get things, and they put it up, and it's absolutely free to use from anybody. So it's why I've used it a lot to find the European ancestors, and got my family back to about 1650 now for the donuts.
Well, I'll have you know, we were traced back to Richard the Lionhearted.
Yeah.
Is that real?
Yes, that's real.
It happens every
we
once
had
in a
a
while,
family
yeah.
historian, and I brought parts of his work to talk with Mr. Donuts after the show. And my mother was always fiercely proud of the fact that she was traced back to Richard the Lionhearted. And by the way, side note, she was fiercely proud of being a daughter of the American Revolution. And she was so tickled to qualify to be a DAR. And when the DAR refused to let Marian Anderson sing at Constitution Hall, my mother says, "That's all for me," and quit the DAR.
Is that right?
And I thought that was making a statement.
Yes.
It sure did.
Yep.
Because she
Bless
was
her
really
heart.
proud to be a DAR, but she wasn't going to have any of that part of business. So I thought that was an interesting part of history in my family.
Yeah, we had our monthly membership meeting Monday night, and we've been meeting out at the American Legion since our
Which is
place
nice to
closed.
have that facility.
Yes, and the part of the program, we're doing a series of programs right now where we're introducing people to our collections and how to go about finding things. And Monday night was DAR night. So Connie Block came from DAR and explained to people how it worked and what to look for and how she would help people make those connections to get a designation for Daughters of the American Revolution. And she even said that the guys can join the Sons of the American Revolution. So,
Which is kind of a big deal, you know. When you think about that time.
Yes.
Billy, in your research and meandering through all the records and so forth, have you come across a columnist from the east side of town who wrote a column called East of Town?
I have seen that.
Clem Garton was the guy's name. He was a farmer, a philosophical farmer, and one who had a way with words, and he wrote a weekly column called East of Town.
Yep, I remember that.
Kind of a whimsical thing today, but a lot of guys look forward to that. He would report on growing and so forth. And, I don't remember. I just remember the column. I don't remember reading much of it, but that was a big deal.
Yeah, there are people who are interested in what's going on around them and what the history of their territory is, and it would be nice if we could get some younger people started. You know, they don't have to spend a whole lot of time with us, but if they can afford an hour or two here and there, that would be great, you know, depending on what they want to do, and give us some help in various ways. We're going to be compiling, now that you've mentioned it, we're going to be compiling a list of things we need to have done. That way people can choose what they volunteer to do. And they're volunteer. They should be allowed to work on what they're interested in doing. So it's try to fit the people with the jobs that are available. So, and we got plenty of jobs, plenty of them. We have a collection up there. You've probably seen it. There's the vertical file in the back room. It's 15 file cabinets, 4 and 5 drawer file cabinets, just full of file folders with people's surnames on them, family surnames, and we drop loose pages in those files. There are probably 10,000 folders in there by now in those 15 file drawers. But not only that, but topics like the LDC, Lincoln Lakes, things that that are significant to our histories. So we collect all that information. We're going through that whole thing right now, and we're getting it organized. Rogine Logan is working that. Gene Zimmer has been working on it, and I'm working on it too when I work at the shop. And we go through it, clean it up, take out duplicates, get things in order, and then we're digitizing all of that. So that's going to take a long time, because that's a big collection. And we've had other collections, and we have, somebody mentioned the Know Your Lincoln collection that we've got, and it would be helpful if that would be organized in the same way, digitized, and then indexed. So that hasn't even been started yet.
The things that you're doing there in the Genealogical Society are very time-consuming.
Yes.
You can, first thing you know, the morning is shot, and you're not halfway through the program that you're working on. 648-5510. Some of you may have a question. He won't tell you about Barney Bill, the horses that pull the fire wagons or anything like that, but he can help you with some information on how to look for
I can't tell you about those two horses.
You can.
I can. Once they've got their fire trucks in, Barney and Bill became horses on the garbage wagon.
Oh,
wouldn't that have come down?
They went from throwing fire department to the garbage wagon.
Yes.
All right, now there's some minutiae I can write home to Mother about.
There you go.
How many do you have working as active volunteers, Mr. Donut?
Probably about 12. We have some people that do specifically
folks.
Research for people. Gary Fries is one of those. Jane Zimmer is one of those. We even go back to Bill Detmers, who lives in Normal and can't come down anymore, but he gets online and does some research for us. So that's always a big help. Long time people have been around a long time, doing a lot for the society. And I emphasize the long time because I'm in that same boat, and we need to introduce more people to that to know what's there and how to find it. So we've got things planned that I'm not ready to open up about, giving a lot of information for, because I've got people to talk to first. But we're trying to make plans to expand all this and improve what we're doing.
You're on a storied street. The Genealogical Society is on a street that has a lot of history to it. For instance, not everybody very few today would remember that a railroad went right down the center of that, the Illinois traction system, what we call the traction system. Entered the north side of town, went right straight down to Chicago Street, went out the south side of town onto Springfield and onto St. Louis from there. So at one point in time, we had two railroads, what was known as the Chicago and Alton, which was the original St. Louis to Chicago route. And then paralleling that through central Illinois was the Illinois traction system. And it was pretty easy for people to go to Springfield in those days.
Yeah, we bring in people from time to time on our membership meetings with programs like that. We've had somebody that did the Illinois traction system, and they must have a museum somewhere because he had a lot of artifacts when he came in. And we love when that happens, that they have more information about it and can talk about things that happened in Logan County. Our next meeting is in March, on the 21st of March, 6:30 at American Legion. And I think I was supposed to give my part of the series, but it sounded like we might switch over to having Ron Keller come in. He just recently did a talk show online with Looking for Lincoln, and talking about Abraham Lincoln's involvement in the development of Logan County. And it was fantastic. I listened to it and watched it, and he will put a good program on for us there.
Bill, when you were a high school student, were you interested in history as such?
Didn't like
most of us
trying to
found
remember
history
those
very
dates.
boring.
It was just not my thing.
It's too bad you have to get old to appreciate it.
Yes.
I'd have been a much better student in high school had I had the interest I have now. But boy, it was a tough subject, and
Yes.
nobody was always, and the instructors could make it come alive or be awful dry.
Yes.
Now I had two, one of each, and I did much better in the other class than I did in the first one. A good history teacher can really make it a fun class.
Yes, it can. I've always appreciated the history teachers we had. When I was an administrator, I would go into their classrooms and evaluate them annually, and always learn something new. I was always open to hearing things that had occurred since I was a kid, or was interested in. But a lot of them made it interesting.
Go ahead, honey. I'm waving. You're standing there.
Well, I'm just kind of a bystander here.
Well, she's so young, she doesn't understand history.
Well, that isn't it. It's that I wasn't from here, as it were. You know,
Right.
my great-grandparents all came from Norway, and they all settled with the rest of the Norwegians down in southern Minnesota. And
Well, that's history.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the history of Logan County
Right.
at all.
Well, the Genealogical Society obviously does specify or specialize in history of our immediate environs here in Logan County, but that doesn't mean that people who have to come from southwest Chicago and come in there looking for somebody that
Oh,
may
sure.
not be here at all.
We have people come in from other countries. The last couple that came in was
Excuse me.
doing some research on the LDC, and we have not a bunch, but a lot of information that they left with us, some of their scrapbooks and stuff when they closed, and some of the furniture that we have there is from LDC. But these people, he was from Dubai, and she was from somewhere in Canada. But they were both working in Dubai at the time, and he was English. And I don't know how they knew about it, but they wanted to know more about the LDC.
I'll be darned.
So we have people walk in and just surprise us, too.
Sure. One of your past Roots and Branches publications had a big article on LDC.
Yes,
And as it was
I
called
have
in those
the-
days, the Feeble-Minded Institute.
well, it was the
Yes.
Illinois Asylum of
Terminology.
Feeble-Minded Children.
That's right. You know, terminology has changed.
Yes.
That was kind of interesting in reading this publication to see some of the terminology that was used wasn't considered respectful today.
Right.
You just didn't say those kinds of things anymore.
But the newspapers that I've been working on, the histories of those things, of how they were developed and who got them started, you know, like Lincoln College, LDC, a lot of those institutions, the histories are in those newspapers that I've been indexing. So I've been pulling those, and I save a lot of them for Dr. Gerlach for the university. So, and then I give them to him every once in a while when I've got a collection going on, and he appreciates getting those historical views of Lincoln College and the history.
By the way, speaking to Dr. Gerlach, we're lucky to have the leadership we have there on Lincoln College. The recent snow again, he was out with the students scooping snow.
And
You see, that's a little thing in and of itself, but it's a big thing when you look at the whole picture. And it speaks volumes for the kind of administration that we have.
that, and they've provided us meeting rooms for our board meetings for the society. Since we can't meet up at the center, we've been meeting out at Lincoln College in this room or that room, the alumni room or the trustee room, so they've been very helpful during this period.
Really important to our community. We're lucky to have these two educational institutions we have on
Yes.
Lincoln Christian Seminary and Lincoln College are very, very important to us. Bill, we have about 30 seconds left. Would you like to sum up a little something about the Genealogical Society?
Well, if people are interested, we could use the $20 for sure. And if we had a lot of $20 bills, it would make life easier for us. Like I said, on this spray thing, it's using up over $15,000 of our own money. So our reserve is getting rather thin. And if people can be a member, we'll share the information that we're putting together. In those quarterlies, I try to mention every community from the newspapers that I can every month. Or every quarter, they're quarterly, so it's like every 3 months you get one of these. And they're 20 pages long each, so there's plenty of stuff in them. A lot of good reading, a lot of good history. So become a member.
Even those 10 poor souls out of Burtonview.
Yes.
Never forget
I keep running
Burtonview.
across information on the Sisson family from out there.
That's
I know
exactly correct.
That's your line.
That's my roots. Anyway, thank you, Bill Donath, very much for spending your time and giving of your time this morning. You folks, you and your volunteers there at the Logan County Genealogical Society do a great job for those of us, whether we use your services or not. It's very important to the history of our community. So thank you very much, Mr. Donath.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you.